Niagara is not just a waterfall. It is a wall of thunder, a border of mist and stone, a place where beauty and violence have lived together for thousands of years. Millions come to admire its grandeur, photograph rainbows, and feel its spray on their skin. But behind that spectacle lies an older story, written by glaciers, shaped by war, transformed by industry, and haunted by human ambition. This is the story of Niagara Falls. Not only how it became one of Earth's majestic wonders, but how its power changed history and why its future hangs in the balance today. Before dawn, Niagara does not announce itself with beauty. It announces itself with sound. Long before the falls appear through the darkness, there is a low vibration in the air, a rolling thunder that feels less like water and more like the breathing of something. Then the first light rises, and the river seems to split open. A vast sheet of white water plunges over the escarpment, vanishing into mist. For a moment, it looks impossible, too wide, too violent, too alive to belong to a river. Most people think they understand Niagara Falls, a famous natural attraction, a honeymoon destination, a postcard miracle between the United States and Canada. But that familiar image hides a deeper truth. Niagara is not a static wonder. It is a machine of erosion, a remnant of an ice age catastrophe, and one of the most powerful landscapes in North America. What we see today is only a moment in a story that began at the end of the last glacial age, when walls of ice taller than skyscrapers retreated and rearranged an entire continent. Roughly 12,000 years ago, the Laurentide ice sheet began to collapse. As it melted, it released unimaginable volumes of water, carving channels, shaping basins, and helping create the Great Lakes. Niagara was born from that upheaval. Water from 4 immense lakes began pouring toward Lake Ontario, cutting through layers of rock and shale. The falls did not simply appear where they stand now. They have been moving, retreating upstream over thousands of years, slowly slicing through the land like a saw powered by gravity. That is the first hidden shock of Niagara. The falls are alive in geological time. Since their birth, they have migrated several miles from their original position. Every crashing second tears away more stone. Every season, the river continues the work begun by melting ice and planetary change. To stand before Niagara is to witness not a finished monument, but an event still unfolding. And humans have always understood, at some instinctive level, that this place was more than scenery. Long before tourists arrived, Indigenous peoples lived beside these waters and gave meaning to their force. For nations such as the Haudenosaunee, Niagara was part of a living world of spirit, memory, and danger. The falls were not merely observed, they were respected, feared, interpreted. Because a place that could generate such power was never only beautiful, it was sacred, and it was alive. Then came empires, French explorers, British soldiers, traders, settlers, engineers. Suddenly, Niagara was no longer just a place of wonder. It became a strategic corridor, a borderland, a contested artery of movement and power. Armies passed near it, forts rose around it, commerce gathered around its currents. In the 19th century, another transformation arrived: industry. The same water that inspired awe could also turn turbines, drive mills, and eventually electrify cities. Niagara was becoming something unprecedented, not only a natural spectacle, but a captured force. Yet the more humanity admired Niagara, the more it tried to control it. Rockfalls, diversions, hydroelectric tunnels, protective engineering, even deliberate interventions to slow erosion, all revealed a startling truth. This famous wonder was not as permanent as it looked. Left entirely alone, Niagara would keep changing, keep retreating, keep rewriting its own shape. The icon people traveled across the world to see was unstable today. And that raises the question at the heart of the mystery. If Niagara Falls is both natural miracle and engineered survival, are we witnessing timeless grandeur or a vanishing moment humanity is struggling to preserve? To understand Niagara, you have to look past the curtain of water and into the architecture beneath it. The spectacle above is only the visible expression of a hidden mechanism below. At the crest lies a hard layer of dolostone, dense and resistant, like armor laid across the edge of the escarpment. Beneath it rests softer shale, weaker and more vulnerable to the endless assault of water, pressure, ice, and time. This imbalance is the secret engine of the falls. The river strikes the base, hollows the softer rock, and creates an overhang. Eventually, the stone roof collapses. Then Niagara steps backward again. That process sounds slow, almost gentle, until you imagine the scale. More than 3,000 tons of water can thunder over the brink every second during peak flow. It is not simply a waterfall. It is a demolition force operating without rest day and night, century after century. Scientists have compared the erosive power of major waterfalls to a giant industrial cutting system, except this one is powered by gravity alone. Every plunge sends shock through rock. Every winter freeze expands fractures. Every spring thaw loosens the edge. Niagara is geology in motion, disguised as beauty. But geology is only part of the story. History turned this natural force into one of the most important energy landscapes on Earth. In the late 19th century, the world was entering a new age, an age hungry for power. Factories needed it. Cities demanded it. Inventors imagined futures lit by electricity. And at Niagara, humanity saw something extraordinary. A river already doing immense work, every second for free. The question was no longer whether the falls were magnificent. The question was whether that magnificence could be harnessed. The race to capture Niagara's energy became one of the great technological dramas of the industrial era. Engineers bored tunnels through rock, designed turbines large enough to convert river force into current, and helped turn the region into a proving ground for modern hydroelectric power. This was the age of Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse, when alternating current began to defeat the limitations of earlier systems. Niagara became more than a landmark. It became a symbol of the electrical future, a place where nature's violence was translated into light, motion, and industrial civilization. And yet the twist was unsettling. The more engineers learned to use the river, the more they realized they were altering the very wonder they depended on. Water diverted into tunnels meant less water over the crest. Protective work slowed erosion, but changed the natural rhythm of collapse. Entire sections of the landscape were studied not simply as wilderness, but as infrastructure. At times, the balance became so delicate that officials worried Niagara might be loved to death. Preserved, regulated, and engineered until the raw force that made it legendary was partly hidden behind management. Then came one of the strangest episodes in Niagara's history. In 1969, the American Falls were temporarily dewatered by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. For months, water was diverted, and the world saw something almost unthinkable: the exposed skeleton of the falls. Without the crashing white torrent, there was broken rock, ancient debris, and the harsh anatomy of a landscape stripped bare. It looked less like paradise than ruin. The illusion had vanished, and in its place stood a reminder that even the greatest wonders can be manipulated. That revelation changed everything. Niagara was not just a masterpiece of nature. It was a negotiation between natural power and human control, between erosion and engineering, between spectacle and survival. And the deeper scientists and historians looked, the clearer it became that the falls were not a finished chapter of Earth's story. They were an unstable threshold, still shifting, still vulnerable, and still carrying a question larger than the river itself. What happens when humanity becomes responsible for preserving a force it was never meant to command? The final truth about Niagara is not only that it is powerful, it is that its power has consequences far beyond the edge of the falls. Every second, this river reminds us of a lesson civilizations often resist. Nature is not a backdrop to history. It is one of history's authors. Niagara shaped borders, economies, technologies, and imaginations. It helped define the relationship between two nations. It accelerated the age of electricity. It transformed surrounding landscapes into engines of modern industry. And yet, for all humanity has taken from it, the river remains older than our ambitions and less obedient than our machines. There is something almost unsettling in that contradiction. We come to Niagara expecting permanence. The cliffs feel eternal. The roar feels ancient beyond measure. The mist rises like breath from the earth itself. But permanence is an illusion. The falls have already moved dramatically since their birth. Their future movement has been slowed not by destiny, but by intervention. Dams, diversions, power stations, and international agreements now help regulate how much water actually pours over the crest. The image most people think of as natural Niagara is, in part, a negotiated performance, a wonder shaped not only by geology, but by law, engineering, and political compromise. That realization opens a much bigger question. If one of the most iconic waterfalls on Earth now survives in a partly managed state, what does that say about the age we live in? Across the planet, rivers are dammed, glaciers are retreating, coastlines are redrawn, forests are fragmented, and even the atmosphere bears the signature of human activity. Niagara is not just a waterfall. It is a symbol of the Anthropocene, a world in which human beings no longer merely witness nature, but alter its destiny. The terrifying implication is not that we are powerless. It is that we have become powerful enough to change wonders we once believed untouchable. And still, Niagara refuses to become fully human. Storms swell it, ice chokes it, rock continues to fracture in silence beneath the thunder. In winter, the gorge can become a frozen cathedral of blue-white walls and suspended spray, beautiful and severe. In flood, the river reminds engineers that calculation is never the same thing as command. Even now, scientists monitor erosion, flow, and climate patterns because the system remains alive, unstable, and responsive to forces larger than any blueprint. Niagara may be regulated, but it is not conquered. Perhaps that is why the falls continue to move people so deeply. Not because they are merely beautiful, but because they expose a truth we spend much of modern life trying to forget. We build cities to feel safe. We design systems to feel in control. We turn landscapes into resources and call that progress. But then a place like Niagara stands before us and collapses all those illusions in a single sound. Its roar is older than our languages of ownership. Its motion is wider than our plans. Its beauty is inseparable from destruction. And maybe that is the real history of Niagara. Not only the story of glaciers and empires, turbines and treaties, but the story of humanity confronting something magnificent that cannot be reduced to convenience. For centuries, we have come to this brink to admire, exploit, study, photograph, and contain it. Yet the deepest encounter is simpler. We stand at the edge, feel the ground tremble, watch the water vanish into mist, and remember how small we are. Civilizations rise, technologies advance, and borders shift across maps. But the river keeps falling, the stone keeps yielding, and the earth keeps writing its slow, unstoppable script. And in the thunder of Niagara, we hear a message as old as time. What is most beautiful in this world is often what can never truly be held.